So my name is Dayana, and I am a mother of two. I teach my children about consent. I tell them your body, your choice. How do I raise them in a country where the state thinks they own our bodies and can do the ultimate harm to them, which is to kill them? I teach my children that it's okay to make mistakes. What's important is we learn from them. How do I raise them in a country where a mistake will lead to the court sentencing them to death without looking back? I teach my children that we don't hurt the people we love. How do I raise them in a country that does not love them? So like Sophie said, I used to work with at-risk youths. This is what the state called them because they were at risk of offending, or some of them already had. But in reality, they were youths in need of care and connection. Part of my job was to refer these youths to community service that would help them feel a sense of belonging. And it was hard for me to find available services for all of them. If it was hard for me, what about them? What resources did they have to rely on before leading to offending? And it wasn't really a lack of consequential thinking that led to them to do what they did. We all know what the consequences are in this country. It was always a moment of desperation, of needing to be connected to something that felt bigger and better than their pain. So many of the people on death row developed an addiction to substances as children, and so many of them were arrested for being drug couriers in their youth. I've spoken to enough at-risk youths who started consuming drugs to know that their background stories are no different from the death row prisoners. A life of trauma history, a lack of socioeconomic stability, and a lack of attachment relationships are some commonalities. This in no way makes them a bad person. It highlights a gap that not everyone is benefiting from the so-called meritocracy in this country, and an extremely lazy and cruel thing to do is to kill them. My work with youth made me come across this TED Talk by Johan Hari, titled "Everything You Know About Addiction is Wrong." And how I wish our ministers and fellow Singaporeans listened to it. One key takeaway that I got from the talk was that Johan Hari shared, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it is connection. And what do we do with drug addicts in this country? We label them, we rehabilitate them behind bars. Our drug rehabilitation center is pretty much a prison within the prison complex. Drug users are made to go cold turkey in hope that they would snap out of it when they eventually get to return to society. Drug offenders are people who are already disconnected. And the consequence that they are given for offending is further disconnection. How does this help them? How do we expect them to get back on their feet when they come out? Even more disconnected than before. The stigma of someone who has been incarcerated is a social harm that widens inequality and perpetuates disconnection. And this is a vicious cycle that a drug offender goes through in this country. Where is the help they need? Where is the support? Which drug user or anyone who has fallen into the drug war is going to reach out for help if they know that if they do, they're going to be punished? Pannir was a drug courier. The state chose to believe that he is a bad person who should be killed. When you make a conscious choice that someone needs to be rid of a human life, you believe that they are beyond redemption, that their life is no longer of use to you or the country. Is this really the society we live in? Where the state can decide this and the rest just turn a blind eye? Pannir and his family members set up an NGO for vulnerable families to help those who were in the same plight as Pannir before he was incarcerated. They fill the gap that our state is too blinded with power to focus on. If it takes a mistake for the court to not be able to save you from death, then I am so scared. For myself, for my children, for my family members, for my neighbors, for my friends, for everyone. And this confuses me to no end. Why am I scared when they claim that they are keeping me safe? Something is not right. This brings me to a poem written by Pannir behind bars in 2021. And in it, he critiques social inequality, war, and systemic neglect, capturing the suffering of the poor and vulnerable while questioning the world's indifference. This one's called Silent Tears. A violent floods of silent tears, torrent of bloods, souls engulfs fear. The aftermath of warfare, all long years. Elevated walls for welfare, can't we hear? Dear life slips away, evaporated in the air. Do we care to be fair? Plagues of poverty lays millions in cemetery. Healthcare funds lost in warfare guns. Issue of bread and butter aren't getting any better. Access to clean water unanswered even years later. Struggles of poor parents surviving on odd job and errand to meet the end and pay rent in the wakes of their absent. Love between child and them seemed distant. Angers of hunger in the eyes of youngers, how much longer must they remain stronger? For a bowl of rice, poorest has to pawn their life, burdened by the stash of cash, some molds toilet bowls out of gold. Bullets' holes decorated the school's walls, classes loaded with shattered glasses. Bricks and cement blocks instead of books, hand tattooed of bruises and pains instead of brushes and pens, child labours and serfdom instead of childcare and freedom, boiled under heat and toils, not just their present, rather their future too. Exploitations instead of education, predators instead of tutors. Together we can dry those eyes by making a choice to be the voice that wipes the silent tears. Why looking so far? There's always someone near. I don't understand how someone behind bars can think and write so clearly when he has nothing but four walls to look upon, while many of us fail to see how interconnected all struggles are. Tonight, Pannir's struggle takes center stage. He is scheduled to be executed at dawn tomorrow. I was going to read a short chapter from the Quran, which I thought was applicable to us today, but seeing that we cannot do that, I will still share my reflection on it anyway. Pannir will always be remembered as an artist and an activist, not a drug trafficker. I believe his status was raised. The NGO that he started with the help of his family will always be his legacy that will live on no matter what happens tomorrow. And this also reminds me of Pannir's sister's angel's letter to him. When he asked her to move on with her life, she said he has made her life more beautiful, and she notices the beauty in everything because of him. With every hardship comes ease. This chapter that I was referring to, it urges readers not to see hardship as something that is hard to overcome, but as an opportunity to find ease. To not see hardship as an obstacle, but as keys to open more doors. It also teaches human beings how to care for each other. The last two verses. So basically, at the end of the day, once we finish our work here, we can go back home to what keeps us safe and what keeps us going. For some, it can be the prayer mat. For some, it can be comrades. For some, it can be family. In solidarity with all the death row prisoners and their family members, this is the storm before the calm, and we shall overcome. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. I want to see your hands in the air. Is this enough rage for someone who's going to be executed tomorrow?